Welcome to the Money Minus Shame podcast powered by the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute, where we make money human. Here, we eliminate shame from the financial experience and drive money conversations to be holistic and human first. I'm your host, Nate Astle, and welcome to Money Minus Shame. Hello and welcome back to Money Minus Shame, powered by the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute. I am Nate Astle, and I'm joined here with Tyrone White, and we are talking about financial infidelity. Financial infidelity is a super interesting topic, but I think what makes it so interesting is just how common it is and how little we talk about it. I'm curious, Tyrone, do you remember the first time you heard this word, financial infidelity?
The first time I heard it, I was actually just getting into personal finance, and I was watching a Dave Ramsey episode on YouTube, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's financial infidelity." And when I first heard it, I thought this sounds made up. I'd never heard this before. I think it's something that a lot of people talk about in the financial community, people, coaches or financial therapists, but we don't hear it in everyday life. So when I first heard it, I thought it was made up, and I started realizing it was a thing. So. Yeah, it really caught me off guard. What about you? When's the first time you heard it?
I was in my master's program and just exploring financial therapy topics, and there was a academic article that talked about financial therapy, and it was so interesting because, one, it's incredibly common, but it's also, quite frankly, really harmful. It hurts relationships. It can cause a lot of problems, and that was what that article was talking about, was how prevalent this was. And they did surveys and looked at how many people admitted to some kind of financial secret keeping from their partner, but also looking at some of the effects. And the truth is the effects can be really devastating. If you haven't heard this term before, financial infidelity, there's a lot of ways to define it. And I think that's actually something we need to talk about, is how it's not clearly defined.
Yes.
But the definition that I like, that I think makes the most sense, is it's any secret keeping around money where transparency is the expectation. If I'm in a relationship with my partner and we have our finances set up so that we both are on each other's accounts, maybe we don't have any personal accounts, just shared ones, but I am hiding things like maybe I'm hiding a secret credit card or a secret debt. Maybe I have a secret bank account that I haven't told my partner. These are some of the more obvious or clear examples of, oh, that's a betrayal of our trust because I'm making financial decisions without you. But I think financial infidelity also can be a little bit more sneaky in how it shows up. Financial infidelity can look like making major purchases without talking to your partner, lying to your partner about how much something costs or minimizing the cost. Maybe I'm doing little things to avoid transparency if transparency is the expectation. It's a broad definition, but I think it fits because it's a lot like sexual infidelity, where what I consider cheating may be very different than what another couple considers cheating. For some couples, maybe going out and having an affair is cheating. Maybe flirting with an ex on social media is cheating. Maybe flirting with the waiter or the waitress is cheating. It all just comes down to perception. But if we don't talk about it, we're setting ourselves up to potentially really hurt relationships.
I think something that hit me when I dealt with it in working with people was that people could have physical reactions to financial infidelity, similar to sexual infidelity. People could have physical reactions where they may feel nauseous, or they may have just these things that come up that are very similar to sexual infidelity. So have you seen that as well with working with people, that they have physical reactions sometimes to financial infidelity?
Absolutely. One of the points of the article was, when we look at the outcomes of relationships where this kind of financial infidelity has happened, it's very similar to sexual infidelity. And if you think about it, it makes sense. It's a betrayal. Money is something that we interact with every single day. So there's constant reminders of this betrayal. Every time I check my bank account, I might have that resentment build, or every time a new package arrives from Amazon. The opportunities to get triggered by some of these past wounds is really high because of how prevalent money is, and just how often we interact with it in a day-to-day life. Comparing it to sexual infidelity, like anytime I want to kiss my partner wants to kiss me back, or go for a hug, I might be reminded of my partner kissed someone else or something like that. So there's betrayal, resentment, loss of trust. There's obviously lingering feelings of anger or sadness, fear, Very common is for a partner who's been betrayed to have kind of a hyperfixation or a hypersensitivity to everything money now, which again, it makes sense because previously I thought something was safe or secure and it's not, or it feels that way at least. For the partner that maybe did hold the secret, there might be extreme feelings of guilt. There might be withdrawal. There might be defensiveness. Like, it's kind of a one-to-one with sexual infidelity. And in fact, there's been some really interesting surveys since this has become more of a big thing in the last 6 to 7 years about what would you rather find out, that your partner had cheated this way or cheated that way. And it's about 50-50. Finances hurt.
Yeah.
So really important that we do talk about this because it's way more prevalent than we think.
When I first experienced a financial infidelity situation, work with someone, it was early in my career. I had worked with a client, and at this time I was working for a company, it was 101, who I was in the program. So I was working for a company, and this person met with me, and I didn't notice at the time, it was our last session together, but they made sure that they would schedule the sessions with me to avoid talking about the stuff around their spouse, and would hide the fact that they were dealing with financial issues. And the way they said it was they didn't want the other person to stress. Sometimes it's masked with that, right? Like with the good intention of not stressing the other person, but at the same time, they're hiding things. They're hiding the financial situations as a couple from the other person. And at the time, I didn't know how I felt about it, because until I got later on in my career, I started knowing more and more about financial infidelity. But it seems like sometimes it could be masked with good intentions.
That's often how things show up, is people don't make decisions with the intention of hurting or betraying their partner. It's also true with sexual infidelity as well, is sometimes these things slip, and maybe we're not always intentional about talking about our finances. Maybe when we first started our relationship or first got in our marriage, we didn't really set up financial structures that promoted transparency. And so we just slid into good enough territory, or we kind of slide into complacency. And then before we know it, we've made significant decisions or we've created patterns that are hurting us. So when it comes to financial infidelity, it's something I think a lot of people are understandably afraid of. I would highly encourage, set up a culture in your relationship where money is okay to talk about. That can look like making sure that we talk regularly about our finances. We go over numbers. If we do have individual accounts, which may be right for you, there's not really a right and wrong here. But if you do have that, we still make sure that we have the information so that way we can avoid these kinds of things. I think another really big thing to help prevent financial infidelity is talk about your expectations around money. That same conversation of, hey, if I connect with an ex on social media because maybe we're friends and I just genuinely want to know what's going on with their life, do you consider that cheating? Start talking about it. Be clear about your expectations. That clarity around the physical relationship is also really important, to be clear about what are our expectations around our money. Are we going to share our money? Are we not? Why not? What kind of decisions do we make before we need to start talking to the other? Maybe there's a dollar limit. We don't spend over $100 without talking to each other. Maybe there's a sit-down discussion 2 times a month where we look over our budget. But if you aren't clear about the expectation, you're setting yourself up and your relationship up to be unintentionally hurt.
Say if someone has been hiding something, how would they go about telling someone, their spouse, say, or someone they're dating, if they've been hiding financial things from them? How should they approach that?
Really good question. I think to start with, we have to be able to process and work through some shame. You know, we've talked before about shame is the enemy of change. Shame is one of the things that gets in our way, and it's going to get in the way of you having the conversation. Shame thrives in isolation. And so you're going to be feeling crappy because you're feeling that shame. You're not going to want to tell your partner. And then that very often leads to avoidance, and that avoidance just makes things worse. The first thing that we need to do is, okay, I need to talk to my partner. I need to decide that I'm ready to tell my partner. And in doing so, remember that me needing to change something And even if my partner is hurt by the things that I share, I am worth something different, something better. Shame is not a way for me to live. It's not helpful. It's not useful. And in fact, it makes me feel crappy. It hurts my relationship. Like the secret hurts to your relationship, but the shame also does too. And so being able to call out your shame, recognize that, hey, even if I feel crappy, I don't deserve to just shame myself like into oblivion. We don't shame ourselves into change. In fact, we can't. When we are regulated, when we're using our skills, we're using our coping skills, we've made the decision to have the talk. I think the thing you do want to be really intentional about is prepping the other person, letting them know, hey, I need to talk to you about some money stuff. I don't mean to intentionally worry you, but it is something that it's important we talk about. Honesty and transparency is going to be more helpful than minimizing or toe dipping is what we call it, where maybe I reveal part of the truth, but not the whole truth. It doesn't mean that you need to go into every detail just so that your conscience can be clean, but share the important things that you know your partner is going to need to know or want to know. That is hard, but a little bit of prep can be helpful. Make sure that you know exactly what you want to say. Make sure that you're okay with the fact that my partner might have a reaction that I don't like.
So if let's say the two people or the couple try to work together on their situation of financial infidelity, where's the point where they need to go seek help? Like, where's that point? The clear sign to say, hey, I need to go get some help with this situation.
I do think it depends on the severity and intensity of the betrayal. If it's something that we both feel like, okay, we're able to process this, we are able to move past this in a way that it's not interfering with our other parts of our daily life. I think that might not necessarily require professional help. If it feels like this has totally rocked the foundation of our relationship, I'm struggling to interact with my partner in normal ways. Maybe it's hard for me to focus on work. Maybe it's really throwing off my own financial behaviors. Maybe I'm kind of in a screw it mood and I don't even care anymore because my partner hurt me. Why shouldn't I be able to hurt them? That's probably a chance where you need to go get some professional support. Is this drastically interfering with the way that we function or show up in our relationship?
And when we talk about professional help, is there a certain type of professional that they should go seek to get the type of help? Is there something that they should go for more than another situation?
Generally, I'd say financial therapists are a good first step. Also, just because this is often mostly a relationship issue, going to a mental health therapist, if you're not able to meet with a financial therapist, someone who specializes in that, going to a couples and family therapist can be helpful. Now, at the end of the day, what matters is your relationship with the therapist. If you and your partner get along with the therapist, it doesn't matter if they are marriage and family therapists, if they're a social worker, if they're a licensed professional counselor. At the end of the day, if we have a good rapport, it's probably the most important thing. But couples and family therapists do get a little extra training on couples dynamics, on these kinds of issues. So it's at least worth considering.
Do you have any specific examples of financial infidelity that happened when you've been working with clients?
Yeah, it happens quite a bit. I had one couple where they both made a decent amount of money, but she had overspent by tens of thousands of dollars, and she had kept a secret credit card that she didn't tell him about. And the reason that it came out was because they were looking at buying a new home. And they did a credit check, and sure enough, her credit card came out. It prevented them from being able to buy the home, and it really rocked their relationship. It was hard because I think she felt, because of some other relationship issues that were going on where he wasn't feeling very available to her, she had some internalized gender roles where he's supposed to be making more money than me, but because I'm making more, like I should be able to spend more. I think she used that to justify the behavior. And then of course he was very hurt by both the secret credit card, but also her explanation of why she did it. So that was painful. And we worked for a good 9 months together before things felt a little better. That was a more serious case, I think, of as far as the gravity of tens of thousands of dollars. And I had another couple where one partner would buy things on Amazon and consistently lie to their partner about how much it cost. They would say, oh, yeah, no, it's just a few $100s here and there. It's fine. We're fine. But then eventually they came clean and said, actually, I spent $5,000 on Amazon in the last 2 weeks. And it was preventing them from also doing some things with their home. They were planning on upgrading some things. And it's really interesting because the betrayal, it hurts both partners differently. I think that's the best way to put it. Sometimes when there is this kind of financial infidelity, it's really easy to slip into, I feel empathy towards the person that was betrayed. But the truth is, these kinds of things don't always happen just to harm that one person. A lot of times there are really important other aspects that cause or are part of the cause of why someone does do this. I'm not saying that is an excuse for poor behavior, but I do think there is context for why people end up making these choices. And so that's a really tough thing when you're working with couples and one partner is feeling very justified in their pain, which makes sense. And the other person may be feeling a lot of guilt, but that other person, the person that made the choice to hide or be secretive with the money, probably also has a very important perspective on what was going on. It's never a simple thing where it's just person A hurt person B, it's all person A's fault, and therefore it's all on person A to make everything right. Healing is relational. Now, person A needs to own their stuff, needs to own their actions, and we need to see this as a relationship healing process that we both partake in, participate in. As much as this is about person A working to restore trust, this is about person B learning to honor person A's perspective where possible and learn to trust again. And that takes work from both parties. It can be a really devastating experience and can be a very healing one too. It's complicated, it's nuanced, but it's something that I think is important to say. This is a nuanced issue.
Yeah. There's so many things that can go into it that led up to the financial infidelity. There could be outside factors. And for us to understand those different things helps us to move forward. A lot of times we have to understand why the person is doing what they're doing to try to help move forward in the relationship. So I definitely understand what you're saying. I know you gave some examples of it just now, but do you have any advice for people who are affected by financial infidelity to try to move forward and get help and stuff? Maybe some techniques?
The first step really is just being able to tell your partner. Once that's happened, it's really important that both of you make space for your emotions. What I mean by that is sometimes we hope that because we've been living in this shame or we've been living in this guilt, that as soon as we talk about it, I'm not going to feel bad anymore, or my partner's not going to feel bad anymore. So if you were the one that maybe engaged in the financial infidelity, it's going to be really important that you allow your partner to have emotional responses to it. Your partner may be angry, they may be sad, they may be disappointed, they may be having a really hard time trusting you. Maybe it's been several months or 6 months or even a year or years after, and you're like, why don't you trust me yet? We need to be patient. We need to allow for our partner to have a response. Oftentimes, the person who engaged in the financial infidelity is ready to move on quicker than the other. Not always, but oftentimes. And so practicing that, okay, I need to do what I need to do, even if my partner has a response. And my partner having a response does not necessarily mean that the relationship is over. It does not necessarily mean that I need to feel awful about myself forever. I just need to allow my partner to have an emotion. Now, with that, kind of a big asterisk is our emotions, yours or your partner's, are not excuses for poor behavior. It doesn't mean that we have no consequences if we scream at our partner or no consequences if we call our partner names. We are still accountable to our behavior. We might have emotions and we might need to share that emotion, but we can share emotion without damaging our character, without engaging in specific behaviors that aren't okay. Obviously, it doesn't mean that it's okay to hit each other. It doesn't mean it's okay to slam doors. It doesn't mean that it's okay to throw things. It doesn't mean that it's okay to call each other names. Like, we're still accountable to our behaviors, even if we have really big emotions. So if you were the person on the receiving end of the financial infidelity, it's going to be really important for you to practice your own coping and your own regulating skills, making sure you're doing things like journaling, seeing your own therapist, doing some deep breathing, making sure that you are prioritizing your own self-care, because the more dependent that we feel on the person that hurt us, the harder it's going to be for us to feel like we have choices. And it's when we feel trapped, that's when things tend to escalate. So focusing on the things that are in your control that help you feel safe is going to be important. That maybe you're leaving the relationship. If you decide that that's not what you want to do, that may be looking at how can I start to feel financially safe. However, two wrongs don't make a right. You still need to be able to have that discussion with your partner. Final kind of advice here, along with getting professional support, is try not to make major decisions in the middle of working through something. A lot of times it comes out, we have a big fight, and someone decides to end the relationship right away. I understand, I get it, that might be something that happens or needs to happen. And I usually recommend people don't make a major decision about yourself around your relationship in the middle of crisis. We don't tend to make the best decisions when we are flooded with fight or flight responses, when we're just drenched in stress or hurt feelings. We tend to make more reactive decisions. And so instead, try to slow yourself down. Make the decisions you need to. If there are financial decisions you need to make, getting some professional support, but try not to make big decisions about the relationship. I do want to mention it's very common when there's this level of hurt to have some suicidal thoughts. Please don't make big decisions around that. Focusing on what you can fix, focusing on what's right in front of you is going to be really important.
I've always found financial infidelity interesting topic. I think a lot of things you discussed today have been very helpful. Do you have any final thoughts you want to say?
If this is something that's affected you or that you're worried about, please know that there is hope. And I mean that genuinely. I have worked with dozens of clients where there's some kind of hurt or betrayal or distrust. And it's really hard at the beginning, but things do get better. Trust can be rebuilt. Growth can happen and change can happen. I understand that there might be discouragement and sadness and anger, but we have to remember that there is no permanent emotion. You might be in the middle of or at the beginning of a really intense feeling, and that intense feeling can really hurt. And there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The more that we can remember that if we can ride the wave, we can say, all right, I'm dealing with this now. I'm going to process this. I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to take action, but I can ride this wave. No matter what happens to the relationship, I think you are going to feel much better. You're going to be able to heal quicker if you can remember the thing that I'm feeling, as intense as it is, isn't permanent. And there's so many very valid reasons to be hopeful about your future, potentially about your relationship future, although that might be a case-by-case thing. There's a lot of hope. So don't give up, be kind to yourself, and there's a lot of healing ahead. Thank you so much for that conversation, Tyrone. I think financial infidelity is so important to talk about. And as always, we're just getting started. There's so many other deep dives into financial therapy topics and other things that we need to explore and deconstruct. So please make sure, if you're listening, to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode of Money Minus Shame. Thanks for listening to the Money Minus Shame podcast, powered by the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute. This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for mental health services or financial advice. This is a cafeteria where you can take what you like and leave the rest. Make sure to like and subscribe so you're the first to know when new episodes drop. And if you like what you hear, let us know. Reach out at money-shame@gmail.com or send us a DM with thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like to see us cover. Take care of yourself out there, and we'll see you next time.